I came to the bank to get a simple $5,000 loan to fix my broken heater, but the manager went completely pale, turned his screen toward me, and said, "Ma'am, you have $43 million in a hidden trust account. Why on earth do you need a loan?" I had never seen that kind of money in my life, and when I discovered who had hidden it and who it was meant to protect me from, the quiet grief I'd been living in turned into absolute ice. Good day, dear listeners. It's Diana again. I'm so glad you're here with me. Please subscribe to my channel and like this video. And also, let me know in the comments which city you're listening from, so I can see how far my story has traveled. I never thought of myself as a woman who could be easily fooled. I spent 31 years teaching third grade at Millbrook Elementary in Dayton, Ohio. 31 years of watching children learn to read, to add, and to tell right from wrong. I knew when a kid was lying about his homework. I knew when a little girl was hiding tears behind a brave smile. I thought I understood people. But I was completely wrong about the ones closest to me. My husband Daniel was a quiet man. Not cold, just contained, the way certain deep rivers are steady beneath a perfectly calm surface. We married young and built our life slowly, brick by brick. We lived in a small house on Carpenter Street with a wraparound porch and a garden that Daniel never quite managed to keep alive, no matter how hard he tried. He worked in finance his entire career. Nothing flashy, not Wall Street, just careful, methodical work at a regional investment firm. He never talked much about money at home. "The money takes care of itself, Peggy," he used to say, kissing my cheek. "As long as you leave it alone, it grows." I smiled and let him handle it. That was our arrangement, and it worked flawlessly for 23 years. Then, in March of 2016, Daniel died of a sudden, massive heart attack at his desk. When you lose the center of your universe, you become a person you don't recognize. Grief does that. It hollows you out, leaving behind a shell that looks like you, but can't quite function like you. I forgot to eat. I forgot to pay the water bill. I once stood in the cereal aisle at the grocery store for 20 minutes, holding a box of Cheerios, completely unable to remember why I had come to the store. That was exactly when Ronald and Cynthia swooped in. Ronald was Daniel's younger brother. He was everything Daniel wasn't. Loud, smooth-talking, always equipped with a firm handshake and a salesman's smile. Cynthia, his wife, matched him perfectly. She was polished, wearing expensive clothes, and had that particular type of aggressive warmth that real estate agents use when they're trying to close a deal. They drove up from Columbus the week after Daniel's funeral. Cynthia carried a massive, foil-covered casserole dish into my house like it was a peace offering. They sat me down at my own kitchen table while I was still completely numb. "Peggy, honey," Cynthia cooed, rubbing my arm, "you are in absolutely no state to be dealing with the stress of finances right now." Ronald slid a stack of legal documents across the table. His voice was smooth, practiced, and dripping with fake sympathy. "Let me take a look at things, Peg, just temporarily, just until you're back on your feet. Daniel was my brother. He'd want me to protect you. Just sign these administrative access forms and I'll handle the headache." I said yes. Of course I said yes. I was a woman holding a box of Cheerios in my mind every waking hour. I signed exactly where he pointed. I didn't read the fine print. I was 55 years old, a widow in the deepest fog of my life, and I didn't read carefully. That is the one thing I will never fully forgive myself for. Years passed. The fog slowly lifted. I went back to teaching. I tended to my garden. I learned how to exist in a silent house. Ronald and Cynthia called on holidays, sometimes bringing cheap wine when they visited, always asking how I was doing, with the performative concern of people who desperately needed to appear caring. I took it at face value. Why wouldn't I? The first crack in their perfect facade appeared 18 months ago. I had finally decided to update my will. I pulled out the heavy folder Daniel had meticulously labeled Household Finances. Inside were account statements, insurance documents, and the deed to the house. I am a third-grade teacher, not a forensic accountant, but I knew roughly what Daniel had told me we had saved for retirement. What I saw in that folder was barely 40% of what I expected. I told myself I had misremembered. I told myself the market had been rough, but a small, freezing block of ice settled in my chest. I started paying attention differently. I noticed the small things. Ronald's brand new, fully loaded truck, the lavish vacation photos Cynthia constantly posted on Facebook, Tuscany, Barbados, an exclusive ski lodge in Aspen. They had always been comfortable, but this was something else entirely. When I casually mentioned to Ronald on the phone that I was thinking of hiring a local financial advisor to look over my retirement, the warmth in his voice dropped by exactly 1 degree. Just one. But I had watched children's faces for 31 years. I noticed the panic. Then came the morning that blew my entire world wide open. My home's HVAC system completely died. I needed $5,000 to replace it. I didn't want to dip into the remaining retirement funds, so I walked into the First Midwest Bank on Salem Avenue to ask about taking out a small personal loan. The branch manager, a young, sharp man named Kevin, sat me down in his office. He typed my name and social security number into his system. He looked at his monitor. He blinked, leaned closer to the screen, and then looked up at me. "Ma'am," Kevin said, his voice dropping to a cautious whisper, "you currently have a balance of $43 million in an investment account under your name. Why would you possibly need a $5,000 loan?" The fluorescent lights buzzed above me. "I'm sorry," I said, my mouth dry. "Could you say that again?" Kevin turned the monitor so I could see it. $43,412,000. It's in a trust account opened in 2009 under the name Daniel R. Collins Trust. You, Margaret A. Collins, are the sole beneficiary and sole owner. I asked Kevin for a glass of water. My hands were shaking so badly I had to hold the paper cup with both palms. Daniel had never mentioned this account, not once in the 7 years between 2009 and his death, not in his meticulously labeled folder, and crucially, it was not in any document Ronald had ever shown me. I had handed Ronald administrative access to every account I knew about, and somehow this one had never come up. Was that an accident? Could a financial manager simply forget a $43 million trust account? I drove home on pure autopilot. I sat at my kitchen table, the exact same spot where Cynthia had offered me a casserole and Ronald had stolen my signature 8 years ago. I put my hands flat on the wood. I breathed. Then I opened my laptop and I went to work. I pulled every statement from Daniel's old folder. I cross-referenced dates. I wrote numbers on a yellow legal pad in my neatest cursive, the exact same way I wrote lesson plans. By 3 a.m., the picture was horrifyingly clear. From the accounts Ronald had managed over the last 8 years, approximately $380,000 had vanished. They were moved in ways designed to look boring. Management fees that seemed completely invented, advisory charges, and direct transfers to an LLC I didn't recognize. Nearly $400,000 of my retirement quietly bled dry so Ronald and Cynthia could ski in Aspen. But here was the most beautiful, terrifying realization of all. Ronald didn't know about the trust. If Ronald had known about the $43 million, he would have drained it long ago. Daniel had hidden it deliberately. He had built a massive financial fortress, sealed it away, and put my name on it outside of the normal probate process. Ronald had stolen what he could easily reach, but he had missed the actual jackpot entirely. If I walked over to his house and confronted him, I would be handing him a grenade. I didn't cry. The hollow, grieving widow who had signed those papers was gone. I looked at the yellow legal pad. Daniel had built this for me. He knew exactly what his brother was capable of, and he had built a wall around me that no one knew existed. Now it was my turn to finish the job. I didn't call Ronald. I went into stealth mode. Step 1, act completely normal. Step 2, find a shark. I hired James Whitfield, a ferocious financial fraud attorney downtown. When I sat in his office and showed him my handwritten notes and the trust balance, he took off his glasses and stared at me. "Mrs. Collins," Whitfield said smoothly, "before we determine if this is civil or criminal, I need certified account records. But Ronald has absolutely no legal right to know you're requesting them." Whitfield requested the official bank records. It took 11 days. During that time, Ronald's criminal instincts must have kicked in. He called me on a Friday afternoon. "Peggy, just checking in. How are you doing, sweetheart?" he asked. He never called me sweetheart. I sat on my porch, looking at my roses, and kept my voice sickeningly sweet. "Oh, I'm just fine, Ronald. Beautiful weather out here. The roses are blooming." "Good, good," he replied smoothly. "Hey, I've been meaning to come up and go over some routine account paperwork with you. Just maintenance. Maybe next week?" "Of course." I smiled into the phone. Anytime. I hung up. He was panicking. He could feel the ground shifting. When the certified records arrived, Whitfield called me into his office. The truth was worse than I thought. Over 8 years, Ronald had funneled exactly $412,000 to a shell company named RC Financial Consulting, LLC. But he had done it in a very specific way. He never transferred more than $9,000 at a time, Whitfield explained, his eyes narrowing. He deliberately kept every single transaction under the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. Mrs. Collins, that is a federal crime called structuring. It carries mandatory prison time. I didn't blink. What do we do? We moved the $43 million behind a multi-layered legal wall today, so he can never touch it, Whitfield said. And then we dropped the bomb. Whitfield filed a massive civil complaint for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty, demanding full restitution. He sent the notification letter via certified mail. Ronald got the letter on a Friday. He and Cynthia showed up at my house on Saturday morning. I was in my garden, wearing my heavy, dirt-stained gloves. They didn't knock. They marched right around to the backyard. And unbelievably, Cynthia was carrying another foil-covered casserole. The sheer audacity almost made me laugh out loud. "Peggy!" Ronald's voice was a mix of fake warmth and barely contained rage. "We need to talk." "You should have called first," I said, not standing up, methodically pruning a dead branch off my rosebush. Cynthia set the casserole on my porch railing like a prop. "We're worried about you, Peg. We think someone is feeding you bad legal advice. We're family." "Mr. Whitfield handles all communication now," I interrupted, my voice dead flat. "You have his number." Ronald's mask slipped completely. His face went red. "Listen to me," he snarled, stepping closer. "If you proceed with this ridiculous lawsuit, you are going to destroy this family. Daniel would be devastated. He trusted me with his legacy." I finally stood up. I looked Ronald dead in the eyes. "With what, Ronald?" I asked softly. "What exactly did Daniel trust you with? Say it out loud." Ronald froze. He couldn't say it. "We can make this go away quietly," Ronald said, his voice dropping into a vicious threat. "You don't understand what becomes public in a civil trial. Your name, Daniel's business dealings. I will drag my brother's legacy through the mud. Is that what you want?" I picked up my gardening trowel. "My lawyer will be in touch," I said. I walked past them, went inside my house, and locked the heavy deadbolt. I watched them stand in my yard for a full minute before they finally left. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from absolute crystal-clear adrenaline. The climax didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in October, inside a sterile, gray-carpeted deposition room on the 4th floor of a downtown legal building. I sat at the head of the long conference table. Whitfield sat beside me. Ronald sat across from us, flanked by an expensive defense attorney named Marsh. Ronald looked awful. He had lost weight, and his arrogant posture was gone. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. Marsh started aggressively, claiming the 2016 management agreement I signed was fully valid and all fees were industry standard. Whitfield didn't argue. He just let them talk. Then he introduced Dr. Elaine Park, our forensic accountant. Dr. Park was a meticulous, unsmiling woman. She slid a single, beautifully color-coded chart across the table. It detailed all 41 transfers Ronald had made to his shell company. Every single one was between $9,000 and $9,900. "Mr. Collins," Whitfield asked calmly, "can you explain to the record why your industry standard advisory firm has exactly 0 other clients, and why every single fee you charged Mrs. Collins was specifically structured to avoid Bank Secrecy Act reporting thresholds?" Ronald stared at the chart. The color completely drained from his face. Whitfield leaned forward, twisting the knife. "Can you also explain Section 4.2 of the agreement, which states fees are assessed at your discretion, yet we have 0 written communication from you notifying my client of these charges in 8 years?" Ronald's lawyer, Marsh, looked at the chart. He looked at the structuring evidence. You could see the exact second Marsh realized his client had lied to him, and that defending this case would cost him his own license. We discussed it," Ronald stammered, sweat pouring down his forehead. It was a flexible arrangement. "A flexible arrangement to steal my retirement," I said. It was the first time I had spoken in 2 hours. My voice echoed in the quiet room. Ronald looked at me. He was searching for the grieving, confused widow who had signed papers over a casserole. She wasn't there. He was looking at a brick wall. Marsh immediately called for a recess and dragged Ronald into the hallway. Through the glass, I watched Ronald put his head in his hands. He was doing the math, and the math meant crippling. They tried to settle. They offered $175,000, then $280,000. I told Whitfield to reject every single offer. Let it go to trial, I said, and forward the structuring evidence to the DOJ. We went to trial in February. It was a bloodbath. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Walsh, awarded me full recovery of the $412,000, plus interest, plus punitive damages, plus attorney fees. The total judgment was nearly $900,000. Ronald was completely wiped out. But the real justice came in April. The federal investigation triggered swiftly. Ronald and Cynthia were indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud, bank fraud, and structuring. Ronald entered a guilty plea to reduce his exposure. He was sentenced to 22 months in federal prison. Cynthia received 18 months of probation and a massive fine. Their house in Columbus was seized and sold to pay my restitution. Cynthia's Facebook was quietly deleted. The day the gavel came down, I was in my backyard. I had used the very first check from the judgment to replace my broken HVAC system, the exact $5,000 reason I had walked into that bank in the first place. I didn't touch the $43 million for a long time. I let it sit, safe and secure, exactly where Daniel had left it. I eventually set up a scholarship at Millbrook Elementary in Daniel's name, funding college for kids who needed it. I expanded my rose garden. I put in a gravel path and a beautiful Japanese maple. I took a 3-week trip to Portugal by myself, drinking excellent wine and reading books on sun-drenched terraces. I am 61 years old now. I tend my garden. I remember my husband every single day with profound gratitude. He knew exactly who his brother was, and he knew exactly who I was. He gave me the tools, but I was the one who swung the hammer. And I signed nothing, absolutely nothing, without reading it first. If you found yourself sitting across from the people who stole from you while you were mourning, what would you have done? I'd love to know. Leave a comment below. Thank you for listening.